Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Melanie Curtis.
And I'm Jason Moletsky.
Thank you, legit, for joining us today.
Yeah, our mission is living and learning, laughing and loving together with you.
We're here to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust, trusting the entire journey.
Yeah, and on that journey, we often talk about plant medicines, psychedelics, and other avenues of healing. When we do, we are sharing for informational purposes only. We're not doctors or therapists, and we don't promote doing anything illegal.
Inside us all, we have a deep, powerful knowing. We encourage curiosity, healing, and exploration of this consciousness.
Damn straight. Together, our handle is trustthejourney.today. Individually, you can find her at melaniecurtis.com and me at jasonmoletsky.com.
Thank you all again so much for being with us. On to the show. We're back.
We're back. And I got a new hat. If you're watching video, you'll see my, Sedona ceremony guy hat, which I'm absolutely loving.
Oh my God. How long has it even been since we've done one of these episodes where we just talked? Oh,
it's been a few minutes. It's
feels
been a few
good.
minutes. Yeah.
I'm happy we're doing one of these. It's
Me
just
too.
like, yay, chill, sort of comfort zone-y, you know what I mean? And I think that's such a perfect starting point for talking about like the growth edge. Sometimes it's good for us to, take a break from the pushing and go to some place where we feel strong and chill and can actually regroup. And yeah, I feel really good about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to be in conversation with you again. It's been a minute since we've had our focus on ourselves and our journeys, our growth, our actual trusting of the journey. A lot's been happening in the show over the last year. I'm sure if you're a regular listener, you've heard a lot of changes going on. And we felt like it was time for kind of like let's pause and regroup and talk about where we're at and how it's going and how each of us are, as well, along with how the show is and what our feels about it all are and what that growth edge looks like in our personal lives and in our business lives and on all the different ways that shows up for us.
Yeah, because our show is built on our willingness to trust the journey, our willingness to really bravely share about what is actually occurring, what is our story, what is it that we're doing. It's fascinating. Like we have really worked hard in the last year. We became a business. We built that structure. We decided really measurable goals around guests and just other lanes of growth that we were wanting to shoot for with humility and also commitment and persistence. And there's a lot, man, that goes into that, and it's just like even take one of those lanes alone and it's a lot to take on. And I think a huge part of what we've experienced in, becoming, not that we haven't been growth focused, we're always like that, I think, individually, but we've been less growth focused in Trust the Journey for the first, 5+ years that it's been in existence. So to have that now applied to Trust the Journey has been awesome and hard, but that's what growth is. So I feel really good about it. I mean, I don't know where you want to start relative to that. Maybe we can share about
I
Trust the Journey.
actually,
You want to share about yourself? You tell me.
I think a little reflection, what was coming up for me was there was just some transparency for the audience, some of that authenticity and vulnerability that we preach and talk about and promote so much is that, when we built this, as we've built the show, it was never about growth of like the show. Was never the point the point of the show has always been a platform to speak, a platform to connect, a platform to engage, a platform to be open, honest, vulnerable, all of these things, and to talk about our own journeys and to engage others on their journeys and growth. What does growth mean? Like that word growth. I think a lot of us tie it to this idea of progress in kind
Yeah.
of the modern capitalistic sense of like, if we are becoming more profitable, or if we have more listeners, more plays, more downloads, like all this stuff of like, what is growth, right? So for us, growth has been development of skill set, right? Like becoming able to speak with confidence into a microphone, into a camera, becoming comfortable with ourselves in our own growth journeys, becoming comfortable enough to speak about our psychedelic growth curves and healing journeys in a greater context, in a public forum, So growth, this concept, I like, just chew on that word for a little bit. We're so used to it being kind of shoved down our throat as more views, more plays, bigger audience, more follower. And I get this, like, who fucking cares? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, who fucking cares? I don't do this for
Right.
followers. Like
I
we
know.
just had
I
our
know.
6-year anniversary of the show just a little while ago. And at no point did we have number of followers as like a growth goal on the show, right? It's never been about how many people follow or about how many people play. It's always been about how are we growing as individuals and how can we model the painful and beautiful examples of our own journeys for others, so that others who are experiencing their own version of growth can feel like they're not alone.
Abso-fucking-lutely. Absolutely. One of the things that has been so rewarding for me in the lane of how we've grown in Trust the Journey is the integration circles. Man, like they're not that big, they're intimate, but they are true. Like they are beautiful. People are showing up with their real, sharing their real selves. And I feel so filled up every time I leave one of those calls, even though like we're quote unquote leading it. It doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like just being with other people who believe in what we believe in and who are actually in the proverbial arena of their own life experience. One of the things that I don't know, I wrote down because I was like reflecting. I'm like, what would I want to share on this type of episode since it's been a bit, is that I do think there's a distinction between healing centric, like a healing focus, and a growth focus, even though it's
Totally.
semantics.
No,
Absolutely
it's totally different.
semantic.
It's totally different
Yeah.
though, right?
Well, I receive them differently for sure, although it could be argued that healing is a part of growth, of course. Like I would say that myself, but being growth focused versus being healing focused is, in my experience, very different. But yeah, go ahead, jump in.
Well, if you just look at how muscle growth works, going to the gym, building muscle, you actually damage the muscle in order for it to grow, right? It has to be pushed to its point of failure in order for it to grow. So this healing and growth are literally synergistic in the sense that you have to push yourself to the very edge where you can no longer sustain or even do what you were capable of before, and break down and now fail at just be doing what you're usually able to do. And now you're no longer able to do it. You have to push through that point of failure. And now when the body is given time to recover, it will grow as a result. And I think there's no difference in the way that the physical and the mental, emotional, spiritual bodies all work. It's all about our willingness to step in and push our boundary of our comfort zone to a place that is outside of that is new, whether that's an emotional skill that we don't have, an emotion we haven't processed yet, talking about something we've never talked about before, right? What dealing with a underlying medical condition by actually revealing it, by saying, okay, we're going to actually look at it. We're going to go right down there and look at it.
Yeah, totally. Well, and how I would frame that from my own experience, so like for the last, gosh, I mean, I feel like it's so cool, honestly, that the timeline of Trust the Journey is very much aligned with my much more intentional healing focus and shift back to growth focus. Now, stay with me for a second. You've been here the whole time, right? Like when Trust the Journey first started, I was certainly on a healing path. I've done therapy, I'd done this, I'd done that, but I'd never done. And Shannon, my bestie, soulmate, soul sister in the fucking universe, had been doing psychedelic healing for a long time, but I had never gone there myself. I wasn't ready, wasn't time. And around the time we started the show is when I really was like starting to feel the pull toward that version of healing, and again, healing and growth, as it were, but really more healing centric. So anyway, the last X number of years, 5-6 years, I've been very much in that recognition of healing that I've needed. And my life has transformed as a result of that effort. You know, I've talked a gazillion hours about anxious attachment and this and that, yada, yada. Anyway, why I point to this is that I've noticed, and I've only consciously reflected on this recently, but I've sort of been doing it in the last probably like 8 months, is that I very much have shifted back from that healing focus to a growth focus. Like, okay, go Mel, good job. You did a lot of fucking healing, girl. You know, like, yes, okay, continue to peel the onion, always stuff to heal. I'm not saying that, but I had a realization that I'd been almost overly focused, heal, so much so I'm like, okay, well, I've done a lot of work. Things have changed. I've grown. How can I now deploy some of my like amazing type A, like really intentional, badass self to new goals and actually make those the focus and really allow myself not to be so healing focused for a while. And so I've done that in recent months, and it's notably different and notably an interesting new experience. Like, I don't feel the same about going after goals and executing at a high level like I used to when I would do that. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that, you know what I mean?
Totally. I think you're touching on, just again, like diving into definition of what these words mean and how their application looks. And you're talking about how we're differentiating between, oh, I found a wound, an injury, some damage, something that's broken. I found something that needs to be healed, right? And so now we know that we need to heal, and that involves both like an acute phase and a sustained phase, right? So recovery, like there's like acute healing when you're like, something happens to you, you're in the hospital for a couple of days because they need to like really keep an eye on you while we assess things. And then we move into like, a longer period of recovery, right?
Yep.
And then, so if I think about let's use the physical example for a second, if I had tendonitis in my arm for like a year, right? So I couldn't lift any weights with that arm. There's no growth going on with that arm because I'm dealing with an injury.
Yes.
And at first I have it all braced up and it's all bandaged and there's like ice pack on there and all this heat pad and thing. And then after a while, I just have to give it time, right? I got to give it some space. I got to allow it to recover. And then slowly I'm in the gym actually lifting with that arm and use the gains, that the growth gains description you often hear when it comes to bodybuilding or strength training. And I think that gains term comes in the rest of our lives too. Like, we often overlook it, but if we really, pay attention to the bigger picture analogy of what is it that we're doing, you're like, oh, I did some work. I acknowledged I had a real issue over here. I spent some time healing that, recovering from that. And now I'm learning a new skill and I'm learning a new application. I'm slowly developing a strength. I'm able to lift this more and more times with consistency, repetition. And now I have a skill I can lean into and I can apply it, and I'm a different person because of it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so cool to this might sound weird, but it's so cool to experience myself with more ease. You know what I mean? Even when I am upset, triggered, emotional, depressed, going down a doomsday mental spiral or despair thoughts or any of that crap that is so normal to being a human. Anytime I'm even having a day like that or a moment like that, I'm with it so much differently than I ever have been. And that is a huge thing that's made possible my ability to be more growth focused now. As in, I can still, I manage myself and my emotional self so much better because I've made peace. Like that, I'm in that recovery phase. Like I'm in that accepting phase around like even parts work. I accept certain parts of myself that they'll come up when I'm stressed. Maybe I didn't sleep very well. Maybe some stressful thing happened. Maybe I don't know, have a conflict in my life for some reason, whatever. But I just manage it so much better. I'm not perfect, obviously, duh. But meaning I don't know, I just don't feel as bad about stinking at stuff, so much so that I can be more focused on what I'm aiming to achieve.
Oh boy. Yeah. The stinking at stuff comment there made me smile, because there's a certain thing that we need to do in our lives over and over and over again in order to truly maintain that growth edge. So this is kind of like, I guess the analogy I'll use here is like regularly stepping up to the whetstone with your blade to resharpen the blade. And we need to dull the blade in order to resharpen it. And this goes along with like classic statements like, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, right? The idea here is the blade is meant to become dulled, right?
Yeah.
It's not to sit on a shelf and never be used and be perfect and, kept in its bubble wrap, to quote Jimmy Poucher. The blade will become dull and we need to sit down and sharpen it again. And the whole point of stepping into growth is doing things that we're not good at, stepping out of our comfort zones in order to be the student again, in order to reframe our perceptions and ideas of ourself. So in my life, I've been consistently pursuing education in a number of different ways over the last, my whole life, but specifically over the last half a dozen years, I've been integrating paragliding into my life in a big way. And that's meant finding new coaches, finding new instructors, taking courses, learning things I don't know how to do, and constantly exposing myself to looking like a Muppet, like looking like I don't know what I'm doing, like really putting myself in a place where I'm like, I don't have a skill here, and fumbling and failing, doing this with scuba diving, doing this with business development skills, doing this in a spiritual growth edge, going into a world of study and spiritual growth where I'm like, I don't even know who they're talking about right now. Like, what's this? I think just lost. Right. And so for me, this whole concept of sharpening and dulling the blade is like, if I'm no good with this tool, if I don't know how to use this tool, I'm going to dull it really quickly because I don't have the skill to wield it with expertise, So I'm flailing around doing something really poorly. I got a brand new paraglider and I beat the thing into the ground because I don't know how to handle it. you know? And now my brand new glider is all filthy, dirty, and I made a mess of it. And I'm like, oh, I've dulled my blade. Look at that. Like, because I sucked, right? Because I don't have the skill. But that's because I'm on the growth edge. And then the next time, after time has passed and I get my next new glider, that doesn't happen as much, where I'm like, oh, I'm able to wield that tool. And again, I'm analogizing with the concept of the blade, but this is emotional skills. These are people skills. These are personal management skills of like just knowing, like, I don't need to say anything right now, right? Like, I'm so proud of myself right now. Good job, Jay. The number of times over the last, I don't know how long, where I have just looked at a situation and seen, I don't need to comment about this. I don't need to involve myself. I don't need to engage. This doesn't require my energetic insertion in order to, try to, affect it in whatever way I thought it needed affecting. So this edge, right? Like constantly learning, constantly growing, shit ain't easy, but gosh, is it ever rewarding, right?
It is. The example that comes up in my life, and I've mentioned this a number of times on the podcast already, is the fact that I have finally really committed to getting better as a keynote speaker. And so about 6-7 months ago, I hired a storytelling coach who I really respect, really love. Mind you, I did a whole mastermind last year that was centered around speaking and storytelling, but it wasn't that good. So like, this is not new. The first keynote speech I was hired to give was in 2009. So this is not new.
It's
This
15
is like
years
been
ago.
this has been a thread in my career, but never one that I have like hardcore been willing to dull the blade, to eat the shit sandwich, to fall on my metaphorical fucking face and like suck and really try to figure this out. And also get the right teammates on board, to your point. Get the help that I actually really needed, right? Because my book is a great example. There's a lot of amazing stories in that book. And for some reason, in that format, I did a really good job, right? That was very natural to me in the moment, in those years of my life. That was very much intuitively inspired, coming out of my fingertips. And it was one of those things that really worked. The example I want to share is, I hired this coach and I'm like, finally surrendering to this knowing in myself, this like giving up almost, this like fuck energy that I need help. Like I was just so discouraged after that mastermind last year where I did okay, but I did not leave feeling like I got to where I really thought I wanted to go. So I hire this woman and I do a like $1,500 coaching session one-on-one with her to like dive into my stuff. And it was an excellent coaching session. She's on point, really love her stuff. And I left that coaching session, this is going to sound terrible, like completely deflated and like demoralized. Not because the coaching session... Totally.
She did a great job. She nailed it.
She crushed it.
Yeah.
She absolutely crushed it. So, and why? It's not because the coaching session wasn't great. It was because I further, in a deeper way, really got it, how much work I actually had ahead of me. Thank God this woman, she didn't actually offer coaching until like that first session, because I've followed her a long time. As soon as she put it out there, I was like, I got to do this. I really want to work with her. She decided to like do a group that was like affordable for me. I'd like pay $500 a month to like get storytelling coaching from her on my specific work once a month with other people. So I'm also learning from what they're sharing, this and that. I'm immersing myself in this environment and with these players that are elevating themselves, and with her guidance. So stay with me. I'm going one more place here with this story, is that I've been working on this keynote. It's like a 45-minute keynote. It has a multitude of stories. Like, what am I teaching about peak performance and performing under extreme pressure and high stakes? Cool. I'm into it. I like this goal. I like that. My life has a lot of these examples, yada, yada, yada. I have worked 5-6 months on this keynote. and we've gotten it to a pretty good place, but I don't like it. I just don't like it that much. It wasn't working. Every time I tried to work on it, it was hard and difficult, and my energy would be super freaking drained, which totally bled over into trust the journey. I'd be more fragile in this space. I'd be less engaged here. It impacts other things. So just this week, I finally had another surrender moment where I was like, I'm going to write an entirely new thing. I sat at my computer, and over the course of 2 days and probably 7 hours total, I wrote an entire new keynote that I feel so much better about. That, again, it's not perfect, but it feels different. And even though it seems like that 5-6 months on that other one was wasted, it's not, because I was so much more equipped to write a better one, even though it was entirely different. So anyway, that's a long story, but the reason I tell it is that it's really hard, and that's all part of it. But it's also like long-term, the like long-term nature of like, oh, if I could just do a couple of months with this coach, I'll get my shit dialed. For me, that's not what this experience is, and I'm making peace with that. The sponsor of today's episode is Great Spirit Farm. Yes. Love having Great Spirit Farm with us, and specifically their ayahuasca microdose tincture. It is a natural MAOI antidepressant and anti-anxiety. Great Spirit Farm describes the feeling as a warm hug. It can help you access deep creativity, flow, intuition, and improve vivid dream recall, which actually has totally been my experience.
So what is exactly in the bottle is the ayahuasca vine itself. So this is a tincture extraction, double extraction tincture that contains the Banisteriopsis caapi vine. Now, the particular vine that this has been extracted from has been growing in Florida now for over 25 years. And the ayahuasca vine does not contain DMT, so that makes this tincture 100% legal in all 50 states.
Yeah, Great Spirit Farm recommends starting with 1 to 3 dropperfuls and increasing your dose gradually from there until you feel the effects. There are no known contradictions with antidepressants, and always check with your doctor and only take as directed.
And what's really great about what Great Spirit Farm is doing is they're making sure that 10% of all the sales are returned to the Shipibo tribe, honoring the medicine's indigenous roots with active reciprocity. Now, if you want to try this tincture out for yourself, you can go to the website that is ayadose.com, AYADOSE.com, and you can enter our discount code TTJ10 to get 10% off your order. Again, that's ayadose.com and all caps TTJ10 to get 10% off your order. This you said one word in there particularly that really hit home with me, and it's hard. That was the word, was hard. I'm like thinking about my own journeys with paragliding over the last few years. This is a really interesting sport because it's so humbling. So I love these sports in nature, like surfing, skydiving, paragliding, things that put you in the sky, things that put you in the ocean, things that put you in the mountains, things that put you in the fire of the desert. Like when you're in a really demanding environment, the element that is this earth will humble you so freaking fast. It's so fast. It's just like one wave on the head, right? One big wave on the head out in the ocean, kabam, and you get through the washing machine and you're like, okay, I am out of my, I am being humbled. I'm out of my element here, and even even
Yeah.
when you train and you're good at it and you've spent a life working on it and developed all kinds of skills around it, it's still so humbling so quickly. So a couple days ago, well, I'm gonna go further a step back. I'm gonna go a couple steps back. I'm gonna say like maybe 5 years ago, I heard about somebody launching a paraglider from near to where I lived, from a hill nearby, and climbing up and over the mountains and flying off over the series of valleys nearby and going and landing and flying around and landing amongst all these beautiful rock towers. And I was just like, what? You could do that? Like, that's possible? Like, how does that even work? Right? Like, what is involved in it? Like developing a skill to make something like that happen. And so that seed got planted in my head, and that there's been so many versions of this in my own life, and so this is where the high achiever name tag comes along with this guy, with Jason Moletsky, right? Is this high achiever? Jason's gets these ideas, and then he spends years and years working towards turning them into realities, whether that is building a business in a industry that's incredibly hard to make a successful business in, or whether that's becoming a world champion pilot, or you name it. In this case, it's this idea of like, I'm going to launch a glider from a reasonably small hill and catch a magic elevator up into the sky like Jack and the Beanstalk, and I'm going to fly off into the distance like Dorothy. Like it's just this whole fantastical kind of description of like, what is this? How's this actually going to work? Like when you
Yeah.
look at it, like, how does it work? You're like, I'm literally going to Jack and the Beanstalk into the sky, and then I'm going to fly off into the horizon into like a whole other county. Like what? Right? Coming from a reality where you need to ride an airplane if you want to go up into the sky, like
Yeah.
you need to like go on a car on a road trip if you want to drive to the next county, like these things you don't just magically loft into the air, So
Yeah.
I've spent the last 5 years visioning this goal and one by one working on developing the skills that I think need to go along with it, and focusing long periods of time developing individual skill sets to be able to feel confident with the elements that are involved in making this happen. And super exciting. Last week, I was able to achieve some of these goals. I was able to make 2 of these flights happen that I dreamed of happening, and they happened back to back. And I was so ecstatic to have it all come together. And the whole time, I was freaking the fuck out. Like, this is a big part of the reason I wanted to share this is, yay, I did it. But there were times when I literally had to say to myself, breathe, Jay, breathe. You haven't taken a breath in a long time now, right? Like, and like really talk myself through the challenge that I created for myself. And there were times when I felt like I am this close. I mean, so close to failing, where I've made a decision to commit to a path and I'm about to bottom out. It's not going to work. It's looking pretty grim right now. It doesn't look good at all. This looks pretty bad. I am like headed for the ground, and having to continually have the self-confidence and refocus back inside and just lean on those skills that I've been developing. Go, okay, hey, just regroup, go back to that skill set, put it back to where it needs to be, stay calm, do what you know you need to do, and be patient and and slowly recover the situation. So before it, fully runs aground, before the ship runs aground. And I want to wrap this all up this year with this idea that not only am I struggling to maintain confidence the whole time, struggling to keep my physical ship afloat, like so that I'm actually able to like stay on top of what I'm doing, and pushing my skill set to the edge of its potential to where I'm very uncomfortable with what's occurring, and I'm not, my blade is dull. right? I am thwacking that machete, just thwacking it. I am not yielding it with precision. I'm doing my best to do so, but I'm thwacking, and I'm able to achieve this goal for myself. I'm able to have this huge moment of success and go, oh my God, I did it, and then the very next day I go up to do the exact same thing, another version of the same thing. And it's a 5-minute flight to the ground. I mean, just like wah, 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 like utter. Like, I might as well be a first-time pilot, and so this is where I love the humility. Yeah, please laugh because I landed. Okay, I landed because I had my lunch. I have my gallons of water. I am wrapped in puffy jackets. I'm gloved. I've got face coverings on. I've got my pee tubes because I'm going to be up there for hours and hours flying around. I mean, there's a lot of prep into this, preparation for a 4 to 5 hour flight coming up here. And the flight
Yeah.
lasts for 7 minutes. And then I'm standing in the desert in a puffy jacket in 90-degree heat, soaking with sweat, going, all right, it doesn't matter. I'm still on that growth edge, right? That growth.
Totally.
I'm still on that growth edge of like.
I totally. Your story, it so perfectly mirrors my experience. It's not a physical activity, but it's the same thing. The other day, for example, I'm like, okay, I have this is the old keynote, the 40, whatever, and it has to be max 45 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I've gotten it to a point. I have to start rehearsing and like getting it in my body and really just practicing saying these words out loud and riffing and just being with this material. I can only really be alone in my car unless like our house happens to be empty. So it's not something I can predict, right? Right. So I said, okay, hell yeah, I can do this. I'm going to go. I'm going to sit in my car. I sat in my car for 2 hours trying, just reading a printed version. So I'm not even like trying to remember it. I'm just reading it out loud to see how it feels and to get a sense for how long it is. It is so wildly too long, and it's so sucked relative to like, like not every section, but like it was not good. And so it was another one of those moments where I was just like, sweet Jesus, like this is so hard. Like I've worked on this for months, yada, yada. That leads me to the experience of, is this right for me? This questioning of, am I doing the quote unquote right thing for me? Stay with me. That doubt is also something I have met before, And so because I had met that doubt so many times before, again, 2009, first time I'd been hired, right? Again, I've been doing this a long time, here and there, this and that. I've thought many times, is this right for me? Because it felt that hard to me. Now, why I bring that up is that what's different about now is that I have really committed in myself that I am going to get good at this speaking thing. I'm gonna fucking figure it out and I'm going to get good at it. I don't care how long it takes. I'm gonna do it. And so that means, how do I reconcile that doubt, right? I go, how I reconcile it is, well, maybe this isn't the right path for me. Maybe the doubt is correct and this is the wrong path for me. But the thing is that I can't possibly know that until I do it. And so I basically said, yeah, okay, it might be wrong, but I'm going to get good anyway. And if at that point, when I've gotten good, I've earned my confidence, I can stand on a stage with excitement instead of fear, right? Then if it still feels wrong for me, then I'll redirect my career. So it's just like, that's a piece of how I'm getting through it.
Good for you, Mel.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Well, that's the whole thing of it being hard, right? Hard is not
Yeah.
easy, and growth is not easy. I think that's the whole point of like the title of the show, the growth edge. Like, that shit ain't easy. I'll tell you what,
No,
some days I don't want to fucking grow.
I know.
There are
Yeah,
days,
totally.
man, where I just want to sit down on the couch and just rest, just be with myself, be with my friends, be with my family, be in nature, just be chill. I don't
Yes.
need growth every day of my life. And I don't need to heal every day of my life. Like, I am
Yes.
not perpetually broken. It's not like
Correct.
there's anything wrong with me right now. This is me right now. And I'm perfect right now. This version of me, if this is the universe just goes poof right now, this was the perfect version. And that whole piece of like finding the balance in ourselves to be able to be okay with pushing when we feel like pushing our own growth, I'm going to be not pushing others, pushing our
Yep.
own growth, pushing our own healing, and then also knowing we don't have to do that all the time, and not to make it our identity that I'm like, unless I'm in a growth state or unless I'm in a healing journey, that I'm not, pulling full value from my life. Not every minute of life is about constantly trying to change.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is individually something that maybe is easier to remember or access. And it's also something that we've, sort of navigated recently, right? So with the show, we've been doing a ton of interviews, as Jay was talking about earlier. And that's a whole nother skill set for us to learn how to do quality interviews, how to share space when there's three voices on a call, that's like a whole thing. How are we preparing as an interviewer team? And all kinds of stuff goes into that. And there's a learning curve along with that as well. And so it's funny, I'm sharing this for you guys, listeners, is that we had this conversation, Jay and I had this conversation about, man, we've been pushing, we've been making mad progress. We've been struggling in ways like, it's not all been easy. Not every interview's been good. Some of the tech has been utter failure. There's been, there's also been, yeah, like
Oh
totally.
my
There's been
gosh.
amazing interviews. So it's like the whole gamut's been there. It's been amazing, but it's also sucked. It's also been hard. It's also been wonderful and enlightening and beautiful, yada, yada, yada. Nice research.
So
You got to be watching the YouTube.
just for
But
transparency, the technical challenges of trying to record a high quality audio and visual podcast remotely with multiple hosts, multiple locations that are changing all the time, and with us, who knows what guest is going to have what room, what lighting, what a laptop, or what camera, or what microphone, and what Wi-Fi signal, and what ability to adjust any settings on anything. And holy schmoly, this has been
oh
hard.
yeah, it's been hard.
Hard.
And so the conversation, the recent shift we've made is not necessarily no major shift, but we were like, it's okay for us to like take the foot off the pedal and do some stuff that's actually in our comfort zone, that isn't so hard. And so like us getting on a conversation today and just like hanging out, talking about something, getting excited about it, being with you all listening, being with each other, that feels to me easy and wonderful and soul fueling. Not that doing a difficult guest interview doesn't feel like that in its own way, but it's a different thing to be in ease versus being in that sort of progress mode.
Absolutely. Well, even that said, I mean, the challenges that I encountered this morning, just being able to navigate to be in a location that would allow for this recording to take place. And I'm just laughing because while you're chatting, I'm watching a fleet of dump trucks drive past my window because they just started a new construction site right next door to where I'm parked, and I'm
Oh,
van lifing right now. So, I'm in close proximity to roads and cities, and it's just the joy of life of like constantly navigating the challenge. There goes another truck right now. We'll have to. I will edit that out of the audio, so you don't have to listen to
I
truck
didn't even hear
noises.
it.
That's
Yeah.
great.
God, I did. Yeah, it's
Um,
all good. It's just so
so
Murphy's Law.
I'm gonna pivot a little bit here, and I'm going to go back into that space of authenticity and vulnerability, and share a little bit more of my personal journey, because that's where this show started, and that's what it's always been about. And I would hope that that's what we always have it about, is about our own journeys and what our curiosities along the way. I'm preparing for ceremony right now. I've been on dieta, which means that I've been eating a restricted diet of removing like quite a bit of kind of normal foods from the diet, and eating a much more simple diet of clean, wholesome foods, which I already eat very well. But I'm also mentally preparing myself to sit with ayahuasca again. And that growth edge for me is now, it's shifting. So let's talk about that dull blade for a minute. Like my first time sitting down with ayahuasca, oh my God, I was so resistant. I thought that I was super open, and I was like, I'm ready for this. And I welcomed it, and I was just open-minded. I didn't even put any like expectations in, and I was very well prepared with 30 years of exposure to psychedelics. But what took me many sessions of ayahuasca to learn about was how resistant I truly was, without even being conscious of the resistance, right? Like these
Yeah.
undertones of just hard no's that I'm not even hearing myself put out in my energy. And as I've progressed, now it's been 7 years of consistently drinking the medicine, and my personal growth journey has been massive. I mean, it's incomparable, the version of me from 7 years ago to today, right? And I heard a term come up in conversation recently, and sometimes I think this happens for all of us. I can't speak for everybody, but I think this happens for all of us, is that we hear a specific word or phrase or an idea, and it resonates with us, and it kind of stands out like bold letters or neon lights out of a overall statement or share or book or whatever it is that we get it from. And this one was about the 7-year cycle of farming a field and needing to let a field go fallow for a season, and letting the soil regenerate and allowing the soil time to just be still, and not have a demand of like a crop needs to come from this field this year. And just a good farmer, a good, caretaker of the land is going to be respectful of the land, is going to give that land time to just regenerate and to just rest, right? And I
Yeah.
feel very much like that's where I'm at in my cycle. I'm very tuned into the idea that it's been 7 years since I started, and 21 ceremonies that I've been to. And this has really affected who I am as a person. And so as I approach this next ceremony, I'm not going in with a dull blade per se. I'm more tuned in. I'm not a black belt by any means of like, the master of self, right? This is about self-mastery, right? I don't know. I'm giving myself I'm trained, right? But no, not the master. And in that, I know what to expect. I know what kinds of changes are likely on the horizon? What kinds of challenges are on the horizon? What types of things are coming up? And I'm able to better identify the correlation and causations that are intertwined and entangled amongst these concepts. So this week has been very challenging for me. There's been a lot of energy coming up leading up to this, and I'm feeling it with physicality. I'm feeling it emotionally. My mental state is very busy and troubled and stressed. Emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. Spiritually, I feel the knowing from the practice, right? From all these years of practice, the knowing of what is coming and how good it is, how hard it is, how painful it is,
Yep.
and how healing and how loving and how beautiful it is, right? And still yet my physical body is revolting at the idea. My physical body is like, no, and getting really, really upset about this, and my mental body is like that. The mind is trying to take over, right? And it's trying to drag me off into, I have been more agitated this week over, say, the last 7 to 10 days than I have in the last year. I mean, like, just angry, fidgety, frustrated, like I could throw a fit of just pissed offness, fucking wanting to elbow shit and throw flailing arms around and just pissy, right? Like properly pissy. And just, I'm feeling grumpy and rainy and, and all that's coming up. So, so there's the skill right there. Knowing how to regulate my physical body through the use of the breath and an audible sigh to help down-regulate the nervous system. And I know that I'll be employing those skills during ceremony. For sure, I'll be employing those skills during ceremony. So I practice employing them during the everyday.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always excited for my people and I feel similarly when I go into ceremony as well, meet medicine with any depth. You know what I'm saying? Like, even when I take a microdose, there's a part of me that's a little bit like, ooh, like that like ego part that's like, oh, I'm a little scared,
Yeah, totally.
So meeting the high dose scenarios, especially with that knowledge of what's potentially coming, is big. I acknowledge you for that. I acknowledge myself for that too. I point to, the last time I did my last 3-day was last year, and I've been sort of on this annual cadence with various microdosing and other experiences in between that feel aligned, that feel like a fit, etc. And this last year for me has very much, because this word integration gets thrown around a lot relative to growth and healing, psychedelic work, etc. And I had an intention on the podcast to record a solo episode about my last 3-day, which happened, I think, last February, or I can't remember when it was. It was a long time ago. And it wasn't for public consumption. It really still isn't, because it's basically, I can sense that the things that came out in my last ceremony are still at play, that there's way more there for me to explore. And also, it wasn't right for me to immediately go back into a large multi-day ayahuasca situation. It was more to be in my life, journal, allow myself to feel, be in my love relationship, right? What have I done for the last X number of years? Figure out how to be more secure in myself, how to have communication skills. Am I not emotional and triggered in that space? Yeah, of course I am. You know, how am I whacking around my like dull blade? Yeah, but that's part of what I'm growing into, is actually being in a healthy, loving, functional, sustainable love relationship, you know? So like that's been absolutely part of my quote work, integration of what I've been healing around all that stuff over the number of years. And so anyway, the reason I point to that is that I feel like I feel like I don't want the cupcake version of integration, right? Like integration for me, you know, like it's not a cupcake situation. It's like
Like a cake to the face.
it's like it's
It's like
like
getting
a
caked.
cake to the face, and it's like a slowly wiping the cake out of your eyes over the course of a year. You know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a long time and more. Yeah, I joke about that, but I'm in that version of integration that feels much more patient, much more calling me to actually be in my waking life, my real situations, my real relationships, and put my money where my mouth is relative to trying to grow and be different in the ways that I want to be different. And so, again, am I perfect? Do I flail? Am I perfect? No. Do I flail? Yes. Do I get better? Also, yes. You know, so it's been good. Anyway, I digress.
I'm proud of you, Mel. I know. Actually, I wanted to say I'm really proud that you just brought that up, because I know that you shared with me personally that you had intention to share about your ceremony, and then you sat with that as you typically do, gave it some time to percolate, some time to
Yep.
brew, and then decided no.
Yeah.
That wasn't where that was meant to go. And I love that you've shared that here in this space, because I think that authorizes people. It gives people the example of authority over, we can make changes to the things that we thought we were going to do. Like, oh, I said I'm going to do this. This has been my goal. My show is all about growth. I talk about my journeys, and then I'm not going to do that this
Yeah.
time, because it doesn't feel like it.
Honoring that individual thing, and which is it's a nuanced self-awareness. It's a nuanced being with our emotional state, our percolation of things in our bodies, insights that are coming up, working with different parts, like there's lots of stuff there. And it is absolutely okay to wait to share until you're ready in whatever space you may or may not share into, whether it's a one-on-one relationship or whether it's to your therapist or whether it's to a public space like this one. Yeah.
So I want to go back and I want to talk about our episode that we did with Stephen Kotler. Do you remember what
Yep.
number that one was?
No, but we can put it in the show notes.
Let's put it in the show notes. Yeah. So the reason why I wanted to go back to that one is during the preparation for that episode, I did an exercise which was spurred by one of the ideas in his books, which is to reach out to trusted people in your circle that are first circle friends or family, first circle people, right? The people you hold dearest and trust the most, and ask them for feedback about things that you could change about the way that you work, the things that you do in your life, because it would truly level up your life if you were to put some energy towards these growth edges. So I did that, and because fuck it, man, I'm fucking 50. I'm like, this life is. So I'm going to diverge for a second here.
Do it.
I'm going to diverge because I love stories that start off going one direction and end up going somewhere else and then come back again, right? I love storytelling like that. So one of the things that's really starting to hit home for me is the things I'm not going to do in this life. Okay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm starting to go, oh, you're now, I don't like to use the word old, but at 51, the chances of me now becoming a big wall climber and scaling Yosemite's El Cap are getting pretty slim, right? Like my tendons and muscle probably not going to develop it. Like it's like the slimmer and slimmer and slimmer chances. And oh yeah, like the idea of doing, XYZ where you move to this country and you become that version of yourself and tell that story, that's probably not going to happen either because we're just running out of time, right? I'm either physically incapable or time or finance. And a lot of it's just, it all comes down to is time.
Yeah.
And going, okay, I'm starting to recognize that I used to think of myself in a very limitless way. And what I mean by that is if I wanted to pivot right now and go live in the jungle and do some other version of Jay that now, becomes that version or runs off to another country or lives a completely different life. If I wanted to transition to female, like, is this a good time to do it? I'm like, I'm 51. Maybe I should have done that when I was 25. That might have worked better if I wanted to transition. All these stories, like I'm starting to go, oh, there's less and less reality. That means I'm closer and closer to death, right? I'm starting to recognize my proximity to the end of life.
Right.
And this is really eye-opening because I'm like, okay, if I'm getting closer to the end of the journey and I have to continue trusting it, if I'm getting closer to the end of the journey, how do I want to act and live and be and feel? And I had a great conversation with one of those people that I reached out to about this. How are we living our lives? And we talked about this idea and he shared and he said, I'm kind of trying to live like I have 3 years left. I'm trying to live as though if I had a diagnosis and said, you've got 3 years left to live, what are you doing with your days? How are you spending your life? Right. And this has really been powerful for me to be like, oh, what do I want to do this summer if I only have 3 summers left? And they're progressively becoming less and less like able-bodied to do whatever it is I want to do. So maybe I want to go climb out a cap this summer because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it when by the time next year comes around, And so making these choices about spending more and more time with first circle friends, about with family, with loved ones, about making more time for me to be in the gym, making more decisions to be healthier, getting more valuable rest so that the days that I have, I feel more alive. I feel more present. I feel more here, right? So I'm pivoting this whole story back to the feedback that I got from my circle of friends because I asked everybody for at least one critical piece of growth edge feedback that they feel that I could use to help me become a better version of myself. Not me, somebody else, but a better version of me. And everybody had at least one. And then there were usually a second or a third add-on. And Melanie does nod her head because she knows, because I asked her, right? Of course I asked her because I trust her, right? And she's great at giving critical feedback. And so I got all that feedback from these loved ones and I processed it without judgment. And first thing I want to look for was a trend. I wanted to see where is there 2 or 3 people saying the same thing? Because if there's that's what I need to put my attention on right away. That's the one that needs the most growth because it's affecting multiple people in my first circle, that it must be something that needs attention. And I found it. I found something in there that I'm like, oh, I need to work on this. I can do better here. I can listen to the advice of the people who love me and I can be a little bit more conscious about the way that I do XYZ. Right. And then inevitably, while that's been happening, there are the second comments that have come in, the second pieces of feedback, and I'll be in a conversation or I'll be engaged with somebody or just living, and all of a sudden I see that behavior occur and I'm like, okay, pause button, because I saw it. So now I'm able to be objective to the experience and go, how do I want to do this differently than I did it before? And maybe I don't know the answer, but I'm going to do the same thing with all the other growth stuff. I'm going to try different versions of it, but they're conscious intention. That's it. Intention. The intention of trying to do it differently is to apply the feedback that was given to me by the people that I love, people who love me, right? And that growth edge, I'm going to say like that has been one of the most powerful things that's come through this, a recent part of my life, is choosing into being different and acting differently because there's room for growth, right? So I'm going to prune a little bit of these kind of old patterns off, allow for some fresh growth, right? And then watch my garden grow.
I love that. Prune some of these old habits. That's great. That's such a great like micro metaphor, and that exercise, I hope people listening take that and use it. I mean, it's so powerful. And it's also another great example of it's really only possible to do what you just described with real humility, being willing to stink at it, being willing to flail, being willing to throw your machete around kind of without expertise in those new ways that you're aiming to experiment with, which is really all it is. You know what I mean? Like there is no other than spiritual universal perfection. Otherwise, perfection is not a thing. You know what I mean? And so many people, myself included, have, struggled for a long time thinking and just even unconsciously being directed by, oh, if I know something is possible, then I automatically have to be immediately good at it. And that is just so not how it works, obviously. But it's like resting in and really making peace with that, I think, is a big, big deal that allows us to access so much more growth than otherwise it would be completely blocked from our just availability because we're holding ourselves back from even trying.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. Oh, my friend, this has been so, per usual, fueling of my soul. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on? I mean, we can always go forever, but I'm like, oh.
Well, I would like to I want to give some applause, some accolades, some appreciation to our Trust the Journey family and to our Integration Circle peeps, because this story is not that alone of Melanie and myself. This is a story of a family, of a community of people who are working together and supporting one another. And so I would, if that sounds like something you want to be part of, I would invite you to join us. You hear the ads in the show. This is legit. Like the Integration Circle that we just had a couple days ago was so supportive, so authentic, so awesome, where we're able to lean into these skills ourselves and have others doing the same, fumbling, falling on our faces, trying again, and feeling supported in that journey. So I would just want to put out the applause and the appreciation and the gratitude and the love to our family and our community who's doing this together with us.
I agree. Full respect. It makes me think of that Brene Brown quote where she says, if you're not also in the arena, or if you're not in the arena also getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback.
Yeah, agreed.
Everyone in the Integration Circle is in the actual arena. And not to say that you need to be in that circle to be in the arena, but that's a version of this vulnerability, this learning how to fall on our face, learning how to receive support, learning how to try and try again, learning how to do all that stuff. Oh, yeah. I love that.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Anything for you, Mel?
Friend? Oh, God.
All done.
I'm just happy to have done one like this. I really feel like I missed you. I am grateful to do something a little easier, like we said earlier. You know what I mean? I'm grateful to take the foot off the pedal a little bit and both experience that ease myself and also model it for people, because it really is okay to like do what you're good at sometimes as a part of the bigger pushing toward the expansion.
Awesome.
Yeah. I love you,
Great
my friend.
to see you. Love you too.
Thank you, everyone, seriously, for listening, for spending your valuable, valuable time, energy, and heart with us. Every bit of it makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you. We would love it if you could show your support for the show by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or follow us on Instagram. You can always click the like button, leave us a comment, or share an episode with somebody directly.
Like we mentioned, every month we host integration coaching circles. So much good work is happening there. You are invited to join us. Go to trustthejourney.today/integration. The Trust the Journey family includes these integration coaching circles and our private Facebook group where we connect and support each other. Join us by going to our website, trustthejourney.today, and click the orange Patreon button.
Yeah, thanks. It's your support and engagement that make the show possible. Thank you. We're here to connect with you. Feel free to DM us anytime on Instagram. We're at trustthejourney.today. Thank you. We love you.
We love you.
Keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.